on-the-record public story of what happened to Sister Kathy, and then there's the world beneath.
This goes bigger and deeper than we can imagine.
He said, "You see what happens when you say bad things about people?"
Hello and welcome to Two Girls in a Cab podcast. I'm Sam.
I'm Carolyn.
And this is episode 25. I've just been having a look. Yes, it's 25. Hi. It's been a while. It's been a couple of weeks. But we've decided that we wanted to come and sit together today and talk about our favourite documentaries, given that The Keepers has just come out.
On Netflix.
So we thought we would have a bit of a chit-chat around that.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And if you haven't already seen it and you're into true crime,
yeah,
absolutely stop what you're doing.
Get on Netflix.
Even just don't listen to the rest of this. Go and watch The Keepers.
Yeah.
It's only 7 episodes long, I think.
Yeah, it is.
About an hour each, and it is, like, it's, okay, it is disturbing, but it is obviously true life, because it's a documentary, but it's absolutely disgustingly fascinating.
Yeah.
I think you can't believe that kind of thing goes on.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say this very clearly from the start. Spoilers throughout. So if you don't want to know, because I think the advert is very clever in the fact that it gives you the impression that it is all just about a nun being murdered. Yes. And it really isn't.
It goes far deeper.
And we're going to go far deeper into that. So if you haven't seen it, don't listen, turn it off. But if you have, and you want to hear what we have to say, and even comment below on what you think, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, and if you maybe as well listening to this don't want to hear about details of some subjects which are actually quite disturbing, because it is obviously things which are quite unpleasant.
This is probably,
maybe don't listen to this if that isn't for your thing.
Yeah,
like murder and things like that nature.
This is our serious podcast. We do talk a lot of nerd shit, but this is serious. This is serious stuff.
Yeah,
that's happening in the world.
So, The Keepers is set in present day. Obviously, there's 2 ladies there who have taken it upon themselves to investigate this old crime which has never been solved. Never,
ever, and I don't think it ever will be. So the first episode sets the scene of what you think this documentary is about.
It's like if you read a newspaper about what had happened, that is what they tell you to begin with.
A nun worked at a school, she was missing for a while, and then turned up dead. That's just the setting of the scene. And it also happened, the same thing happened to another girl, and that's what you think this is about, is just how did they solve the murder of this nun?
Yeah, and it's been an unsolved crime since it took place in 1969, and on the face of it you just think, well, maybe, she was unlucky in the wrong place at the wrong time and, whatever. But when they start to explain these 2 ladies, how they've come to take an interest in it, and then you start to find out that there's a far wider
picture,
social interest, far wider than you would even think. Not only social but political interest, and you even think to comprehend. It's like blows your mind.
It really does. These 2 ladies, you can tell these ladies of the best part about them is they've had a life. They went to school. The reason they've taken such an interest in the nun Kathy?
No,
Kathy.
Sister Kathy.
Sister Kathy. How they've taken interest is that she was actually their teacher. They really liked her. She was very well respected. Quite a young teacher who talked to them on a level that was to them. But you can tell these women of the whole life hasn't been consumed with this. They have had a life, they've had a career, they've had families, they're now retired, and nothing's being done in that time. So they're taking it among themselves in their retirement to do something.
Yeah.
To try and figure out and put together the pieces of what happened to Sister Kathy.
Yeah, and not only that, I think it's because of the things that you then start to find out as the episodes go on, because obviously these women were classmates at a Catholic all-girls academy, if you like.
And if you hear the word Catholic, I think everyone will have an idea now of where this is going to go into.
Yeah.
Because it is not a story that hasn't already been told before.
Yeah. People hear the phrases Catholic all-boys choir, Catholic all-girls school, and immediately you just think there's obviously some sort of corruption somewhere along the lines, and this is probably one of many examples, only real differences that obviously from what it would appear that this poor lady, this Sister Kathy Sesnick, met a sticky end because she was in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So
there was the documentary starts with the two women, and then as you get into it, the cast of it just expands, and it's scary how big it expands.
Yeah.
But there's what did they call one of them, Jane Doe, was the person who actually in the 90s decided enough was enough, and I am going to expose
that school,
what had happened in this school. So Sister Kathy worked in a school that was obviously ran by nuns and ran by priests. Now the nuns, however, at the time were going through a social experiment that they could work in the school and live an ordinary life outside. It wasn't known they would have to go back to a church or wherever is it a convent, the convent. They didn't. They actually had an experiment where they wanted to see what they were like outside and how they worked inside. And that's why Kathy came along very relatable, because she hadn't been in the convent. She hadn't, she
hadn't fully taken all of her vows, had she?
She hadn't.
She was at that part where in the near future she was going to have to make a decision as to whether or not she was going to give her life to the church, or she could then leave and make her own way in the world however she saw fit. But like you say, that an ex-pupil, this Jane Doe, who you later go on to hear more about her story, because she's the one who finally says, it's affected me all of my life, the things that I know about this school, the things that happened to me. And and that lady was someone who continued to be heavily involved in church activities, not just her, but her husband, her kids, their kids. It was like, obviously Catholicism was a big part of these girls' lives, and they've been brought up on it from what it would sound like, in that area of Baltimore was a densely populated Catholic community, and the archdiocese ruled. Yeah. The Catholic Church ruled. Your parents would believe a priest or a nun over anything that you said.
Absolutely, they would.
So everyone has to have a starting point. Yeah. To understand the state of that society back in 1969, that when you were at school, if the priest said you were bad and you did this, your parents would never think that could be called into question. You should be punished. You're the bad one. So what was the point of ever speaking out against the priest at the time?
She's introduced in the documentary as the woman who named as Jane Doe, who came out in the 90s to get this in the open air. And then you go back to the beginning of how it started. She was severely abused, not just by this priest, by law officials, by other priests, by somebody who we never actually found out who he was, and they don't really know who they are. She was
severely sexually abused,
and she goes into detail, and it's uncomfortable to hear, but you have to hear what she went through to understand why she did what she did.
There's no point dressing it up, is there?
There's not.
That is what happened.
Exactly. She tells you about what she can remember. What you have to take into account, these women have gone through so much emotional and severe abuse that they have repressed a lot.
And I think, like she said, didn't she, this particular lady, that the more she started to talk about it, the more she started to remember, and then really, post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't even come into it.
No,
that was kind of like a very bland way of describing what had actually happened to her, and she was reliving it all over again, wasn't she? Really,
her and her talk, and not just about the abuse, but it was just talking about her whole life, from school to where she was now. You couldn't help but draw so much strength off her because she showed it herself.
In some of, from that, and because she was the first one to speak out and try and get somewhere, not because she wanted compensation or anything like that really, but I think it was a cathartic thing, and that she really needed to get it out, and she wanted these people to be brought to account if possible. And the more she came forward, then more and more people started to come forward, because I think she honestly thought she was the only one.
Well, the breaker is, in the 90s, Jane Doe came forward and decided to expose. Now, the only way, she was actually appointed a lawyer by the Archdiocese, so this guy works for the church, and they actually send an open letter out to people who went to Kiosk, what's the kiosk or whatever, and in Baltimore, and they sent an open letter out to people to say, if anything happened to you, please contact us. And they were contacted by so many people. That's how she got the court case. That's how she got the case to go to trial first. And then a second woman, who was known as Jane Roe, came out, and she sued them separately. And they pushed her for God knows how long to get these people to come out. And at the end, you find out that they already knew about it to start with.
From the beginning.
From the beginning. From the day the guy from his first job to the point where he got moved on, because that's what the Catholic Church are really good at doing. If there's a problem, move him on. Just move him on. Yeah. Because the further he is from that community, the
somebody else's problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They are very good at just moving people on. Because I know we're going to talk a lot about different documentaries, and The Keepers was the main focus of what we were doing, but there's Amy Berg, who was one of my favourite documentary makers, did one called Deliver Us from Evil. And if you take Amy's documentary and The Keepers, they're very similar.
Yeah.
You think you're watching the same programme, because that one's about an Irish priest who, on camera, has no qualms in telling you what he did to young kids and what age he likes them at. If hell exists, there is a special place for him. Yeah. Because he is truly the epitome of evil. And what the church did for him, he knew he had a problem, and he went to them, and they moved him 500 miles every time he did something wrong. They just moved him around the country, to the point where they couldn't move him anymore, and he had to go back to Ireland. That's how disgusting that church actually is, that they didn't
It's been going on for hundreds of years, and I'm sure, not just in the Catholic Church, but especially, obviously, from what the media reports, it's still a problem now.
It is. It's huge. And watching Deliver Us from Evil is, like, The Keepers gets you angry. Like, when I said to Michaela about watching it, I says, that anger that you had built up through Deliver Us from Evil and from, like, Making a Murderer, that anger is going to be dialed to 1,000. Yeah. Because they did, in Deliver Us from Evil, nobody went to court. Yeah. They did in this one.
They paid a few people off, didn't they?
Deliver Us from Evil is heartbreaking, though, because you see what the abuse did to not just the person who was abused, the family. I had to stop it at certain points just to walk away from it.
And that's the thing with The Keepers, that you see, Sister Kathy's sister is located, and she gets in touch.
How amazing was she?
She was brilliant. There was there is a question mark over one particular person who, at the time, Sister Kathy was going through her teaching at Keogh, and there was a young priest there called, was it Jerry?
Jerry.
And he's telling part of his story on the documentary, and whether or not everyone fully believes him, because you're in two schools. Either you believe his version of events, which was, actually, I would have left the priesthood and I asked her to be my wife. She said no, and we both carried on. He ends up meeting somebody else and getting married and having a family. The other side of it is he was involved in her death. Now, the sister of Sister Kathy, who turns up in present times on this documentary, obviously thinks he's a nice guy and she completely trusts him, because you see that on the documentary that they're quite pleased to see each other, and he's helping her to piece together whatever information it is that she's looking for. But she tells the story of how after Sister Kathy had gone missing, she received a letter that had been posted after the date that she was last seen. Didn't open it on the advice of her father, because it's evidence, you've got to give it to the police. And a plain-clothed, they think, police officer turned up to collect the letter, and that letter has gone missing. They've got the photocopy of the front of the letter and nothing else.
And a lot of once that letter went missing, then DNA was...
There's so many... Well, it went missing. There was a flood in the evidence room. It went missing. Like, the district attorney, Sharon May, has come off so badly in that whole documentary.
She was being paid from the start. She was supposed to be for the victims, and she was being paid by the church to make it go away. She looked ridiculous. Now,
she looked shifty as hell.
With Jerry, what Ant pointed out was, why would he be so forthcoming? And with all of the information that he has, if he had something to do with it. I generally believe there was love and affection there. He gets choked. The second our name is dropped. And he is married. His wife sat next to him and he still got choked up at the fact.
I mean, I'm kind of like, nah. I would be surprised to learn that he had something to do with it, put it that way. But then there's other parts of the story where you start to think, like the nun... Sister Russell, who she shared a flat with. That was
shifty. That
unbelievable that she would share an apartment with someone who taught at the school with her. She was also a nun, who after Kathy had gone missing would not talk about it ever again, and when she was asked about it, said that in not so many words, that there are people basically with blood in their hands, and I don't really want to talk about it. She was silent until she died. She's dead now. No one will ever really know what happened. And you think, wow, how can you go through your life with that secret and never tell a soul?
The thing is, though, if you look at it from the angle that they wanted you to, if she did know what was going on and that had happened to Kathy, what the hell were they going to do to her? If she spoke up, you know, she was fighting a losing battle. She was never going to win it, and she moved away and she left the church.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Though, because that the lady who was Jane Doe, as a child, had gone and confided in Sister Kathy, hadn't she? And she said, like, okay, well, you know, you go away and enjoy your summer holidays, and this is all going to go away.
I'm gonna take care of it. And then she disappeared. Now, the startling thing, and I don't know if anyone will believe this, but Jane Rowe, I wish I remembered her name now, but because she was amazing, she claims Teresa, that's it. She claims that the priest who was the main guy doing it, was actually took her to the body of Kathy and said, look at her. This is what happens when you're a bad girl, basically. And she said,
people suspected that she dreamt it.
Yes, but she said that she went up to the body and started wiping the maggots off her face. Now in another episode, a policeman who found her body, who was very shifty, you could tell he was being paid a lot of money to keep his mouth shut. He turned around and said there were no maggots on that body because it was cold. However, a forensic guy who is, I've seen him on a John Benet Ramsey documentary before. Well, he's worked with JFK's OJ, Jean Benet's actual case. He wasn't just part of the program, he worked on the case. he said that there would have been, regardless of the weather, there were periods of time where the weather wasn't as cold. Eggs laid. This, he went into detail that yes, there would have been maggots. There wouldn't have been the day you found her, because if you look at the weather the day you found her, it was freezing temperatures. If you look at the time of when she was missing, it wasn't so freezing. So that girl could have quite easily wiped maggots off her face.
So she probably wasn't telling a lie or making it up.
The thing is, though, she's got nothing to gain over saying something like that.
You could tell by the way she was recounting the things that had happened to her. You know, she would just start telling the story so matter of fact.
Yes.
And then you could just see her just break down.
In an instant. She didn't do it very
over.
often.
Yeah, a couple times.
That's why I was getting so much strength from her, because for all she'd been through, it took a lot for her to finally, like, I would be a mess. You might as well tranquilizers, because I don't think I could recount something like that so matter of fact for anyone else. It, you know, she must have had a shit ton of therapy.
Yeah.
But at the end, when they find out that there was another boy who in the priest's first school had done things to him, he reported it to the police, and the archdiocese basically said, here's a check,
go away,
write a figure, go away, and we're just going to move him on.
But when Jane Doe started to bring forward her case in the 90s, they said that there had never been a complaint.
Never.
And obviously he was then proof that that was a lie.
Because this guy, and when they tell her that news, I just says to Aunt, if she doesn't swear, because she never swore once, I says, if she doesn't swear right now.
She's a God-fearing woman as well.
She went ape shit.
Yeah. But sadly, obviously Father Maskell, who is the priest,
his name,
is dead now, so he can't get his comeuppance.
Burning in hell.
But there's all sorts of twists and turns. There's other people who were talked about. They talked to the families of people, and you just think, you know, first of all, really bad and very, very wrong the way the Catholic Church dealt with it in that town. Second of all, the police are probably just as much to blame.
The police are probably being paid by them, that's why.
You get this strong impression that some of the higher ups in the police force knew what were going on, and even part of the story was that Jane Doe had actually been sexually abused by a police officer.
Well, that's her. She said that
who was a friend of the priest, and you just think, my God, like how does this even happen? Like how how do people get away with that?
They just
how do these people?
Money, Caroline.
Like it's like a club.
It's
like they're
money.
on some sort of sick like boys club together. It's like.
It is. It's money. Money is more powerful than anything else in the world. Yeah. In another Amy Berg documentary, An Open Secret, which is one of the hardest documentaries I've probably ever watched. Deliver Us from Evil is one where your temper gets up and your emotions get the best of you. An Open Secret is heart-wrenching. It started when Corey Feldman, of all people, came out and said on television, and he said it in his book, I was abused, there was a ring of them, I'm never going to give you any names, I just want you to know what happened. I want to explain why Corey Heyman is dead today and it's all stemmed from this. And that's how it started. And Amy Berg went into it, and it's just, it doesn't, in An Open Secret, they have a lot of, it's a lot of boys talking about how they were fame hungry. They'll admit it themselves. They wanted to be famous. They got agents who were the worst of the worst, and they will tell you the ring of people in this circle doesn't just start with the agents. It goes higher and higher.
In Hollywood is massively corrupt,
and it's all because of money. It was money, and this is the documentary that outed Bryan Singer as part of that paedophile ring, because when the internet became bigger, before YouTube, there were people who did online videos, not like what you would see today. It was young'uns living in a house. It was like the real world, but it was online, and there was Bryan Singer's friends who work in children's television, who still today have even been outed and charged and still work in children's television. It's discussed, and but he was part of these people who basically, these boys would record all day and they would have their way on a night time, and that's how it was. And these boys thought it was the norm. They got what they wanted during the day, they got what they wanted on a night time, and that's how it went. And they would just pass them around all over the place. One of the fuckers actually moved to Europe because he had to run away. He was under so many charges, more than what Bryan Singer was. That because I think Bryan Singer walked away with it with a clean slate, even though he was very much a part of that. There was one kid who he was a really good singer, and his parents had hired him a manager, and the manager was a friend of the family, and it was I think that was Corey Heyman's manager at one point, and he was so brave. He was being abused from the age of 12 up until when he was 16, and when at 16 he started to get like withdrawn, and that he didn't want to do things anymore, and he didn't like singing anymore, and nobody kind of picked up on it. But he picked up on it, and he sat there and went, I am not letting somebody like him take something away from me that means so much to us. I'm going to end up ruining my life here. And he thought, right, I'm going to get you. And he wired himself up. This is a 16-year-old boy who has been physically abused since the age of 12 and being passed here, there and everywhere. He wires himself up, gets in the car with him, and makes him drive to the first point of where it happened. And he goes, oh, you remember when we were by that tree and you made us do this, that and the other? And the guy like goes, what like, why would you bring that up for? And he goes, oh, I'm just like wondering why you would do that at that age. And he went, well, and then he kind of stops and he goes, are you recording this? And your heart, when you're listening to it, just sinks. And the kid goes, no. Like, so, like, calmly, like, no, of course I'm not recording this. Like, why would you think that? And he just says, I'm just being, it's just driving past and, memories come back to you. And he went, listen, kid, I would never have done anything to you that you did not want me to do.
Wow, that says it all, doesn't it?
Yes, that man still works to deal with children.
Wow.
That man is actually looking to lower the sentence for paedophiles.
Of course he is.
Because
he is one.
He doesn't think there's anything wrong with it whatsoever. And this kid got him caught. Now, so the whole documentary, it's a hard watch because these boys are just so vulnerable. And it gets into Corey Feldman isn't brought into it. He's not brought into it at all. It's more Corey Haim because he actually he couldn't cope with it.
Yeah.
But we watched after we watched that, we watched a Piers Morgan interview with Corey Feldman talking about the abuse, and Piers Morgan, I really don't like the guy.
I don't like him.
But he knew the right questions to ask, and he was very sympathetic and very empathetic with the whole situation. And he says, Corey, we all think of you as someone who's a bit kooky. You're a bit crazy. And he says, but when you really look back of it, it was only 2 years.
Now you know
that
why.
there was only 2 years you were off the rails. And he went, well, yeah, because that was the 2 years that it really affected us. And he went, then there was one person who took it all away and made it better and got me the help I needed, and it was Michael Jackson. So me and Ant were thinking, you know what, maybe Michael Jackson, all the allegations that were against him, which I totally don't believe are true.
I think there would have been much harder evidence against him if there was actually something.
We think that Michael Jackson was taking these boys in. Maybe it might have looked a bit inappropriate to some, however, taking these boys in to keep them safe.
Well, he was like Peter Pan, wasn't he?
Well, no,
he was
it
Peter
was,
Pan when
they
were like the Lost Boys.
Yes, to keep them safe. Because if they were with him, they weren't getting hurt. Because we think that Michael Jackson was probably just as badly abused by the industry, by the people in these rings, because his dad's a piece of work. But that one was a tough one. That's a really tough one.
I mean, that's a whole other
kettle of fish. It's a heart wrenching. Like Deliver Us from Evil made us stop once. I think every half hour I had to stop through an open secret and just do something else.
I haven't seen them, but I do want to watch those. But there's so many things coming out now because the information is there in the public domain. I mean, obviously one of the more recent ones was the O.J. Simpson
Yeah.
documentary, and that's brought out some surprising details. If anyone's seen that
Is it
dramatisation of the...
Well, there was two that came out. There was OJ, The People versus OJ, which was a television show done by the same guy who does American Horror Story.
Yeah.
And that recounts the Corn case. And there's nothing in there that I wouldn't say is being dramatised for a programme, in all honesty. But then there's also OJ Made in America, and that was a 5-6 part documentary, won an Oscar. It's probably the only thing I've ever seen on Rotten Tomatoes to get 100%. And the first 2 episodes are about his early life and his career, and it's quite boring. But if you persevere with it, you get a picture of
who he is.
What I got from it was OJ was quite a humble person. I think fame, and I think when he come out of football, fame and money got the better of him, and then it goes into the Nicole up to now when he got arrested. It starts off actually where he's sitting in his parole meeting, and his parole officer says, "This isn't the first time you've been arrested," and he goes, "What? I'm sorry, what are you on about?" And he went, "Well, back in the 90s," and he goes, "Oh, that," and then that's when the documentary starts, and it takes you up to that parole meeting, and it's such a good and interesting watch. That man, and I have no shadow of a doubt that man killed her.
Oh yeah,
that murder is rage. If they showed you Nicole's pictures in her autopsy, and
to nearly cut someone's head off.
Yes,
it has all the.
It wasn't. It was a stamp. I think he stamped her head, and it hit off.
Stamped it.
And it hit off the curb, and that's how she's got the ligature there. It was rage. It was pure anger. It's not a quickie. It's not a
give us your money and
yeah. It's not that. It's just that was pure rage.
I mean, the only reason he got off was because Johnny Cochran made an absolute. Well, he made it into a circus.
He made it into
and
a
he
race.
distracted them away from what the real issues were.
Yeah.
It became a race thing, and the media whipped it up into such a thing that there was distractions and probably mistakes made by the DA's office. I think she would probably admit that herself.
Yeah.
And that they wished that they'd approach things.
Well, it was
better than
the guy, the police officer. Mark Furman.
Yeah.
He fucked it up because and it wasn't so much he's a racist piece of shit. He really is.
Yeah.
But I do not think that man set him up. He's just a racist piece of shit. And Johnny Cochran, they picked their jury very well. Their jury was made up of predominantly black people. And at the time, you've got to think of the time, the Rodney King verdict had just come in. So they were angry and they were out for blood. And Cochran was no different. In The People versus OJ, they actually show you Cochran being discriminated for just being black. And because he couldn't give two shits that OJ was in prison. He couldn't give two shits. It wasn't until, and this is how they showed you in The People versus OJ, that he got discriminated. He thought, right, this is where we get you back. This is how we get you back for Rodney King, is that I'll get him off. I will get a black man off for murder, because if it was a white dude...
Well, he got away with murder is what he did. And I mean, when you see the discussions that Johnny Cochran has with him about how they're going to present the case, it's almost fabricated in a way. And I mean, that whole thing where they said, OJ and Nicole's relationship was so tempestuous, she was beaten by him, he denied that initially. She had so many of her friends, including Kris Kardashian, who could verify that she lived in fear of the guy.
Do you know what it is?
And then obviously Johnny Cochran was like, never in a million years, and which scumbag would beat their wife up. But then it came out that he'd actually done it to his first wife. Well, so there was a lot of backpedaling.
With OJ is the whitest man in the world.
He's the whitest black man you've ever known.
Is, because when they took the jury round his house, they made it that an African American
It
was
was
living
like
there.
it was like bloody Animal Kingdom
Yes,
in Disney
it
World by the
was.
time they'd finished.
But
You think Nelson Mandela was like his
he
holiday
didn't
home?
have any black friends.
No.
He lived in a white suburban neighborhood with a white wife. He lived a very white life. He,
in those terms, if that's how you want to put it. Yeah.
But they made sure that the jury saw that he was an African American.
He was white Hollywood down to a T.
Absolutely.
Because that's the life that he chose to lead, and that's the way that he wanted to be, and whatever. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with having all white friends or all black friends or whatever colour they are, but they wanted him to look like
Cochrane?
he was basically like the
Cochrane had that case won the second it didn't matter about the other lawyers who were there, Shapiro or any of them, even Kardashian, who was, I've no idea why he was there for. He was a family lawyer. He's like a divorce lawyer. He'd never done a case like this before. He had that case won the minute the jury was picked. He then won it the minute the people decided, the fucking idiots, to put the glove on them, because the jury even said in Made in America that if they hadn't have put the glove on him, they would have thought it fit. Yeah. And he became an actor when they made him put it with gloves on, which is fucking ridiculous. Leather gloves put leather gloves on someone who's got plastic gloves on. How fucking retarded is that? And he put a show on. He sat and he got up. He was only meant to stand in his spot, but he got up and he's walking. I can't get this glove on. No, you fucking can't take your other one off first, and you might. And also, his manager had said that he has arthritis in his hands, and he takes tablets to stop the pain. He can only move his fingers. Wish you could see as I'm like grabbing.
Doing the crabs.
He can only move his fingers when he has this medication in him. His hands were stiff. He hadn't taken his medication for 2 weeks. They told him not to, on the basis that they could get him to put the glove on. So his hands were stiff. So his hands are like just
rigor mortis.
Yes, pretty much. And he's trying to pull leather gloves on. So they lost the minute they did that. But even the jury, like when the jury were let out after the not guilty, this guy stood there. This actually did happen as well. It's not dramatised for the programme. This guy stood and gave the Black Power sign as he left the jury. And the jury members, all three of the ones who would talk on camera, said it was justice for Rodney King. It had not...
You think, you know what though? There's two people there who've lost their lives, because everyone forgets about Ron Goldman, poor man,
poor family,
poor bloke, because
they never... I think what's her name? She always, every time she talks about Nicole, she always mentions Ron's name, because he never gets mentioned. And his family have suffered so much.
And his family, not that they've ever seen a penny of it, won the civil suit against him, but yet they couldn't prove that he did the crime. I mean, how back to front is that?
The forensic guy who was in the Keepers, who was in the John Bonet, he won the civil case for them on the DNA and the forensics around it, because he was such an expert in his field. He won it for them, but he was never called into the first one.
Oh my god!
Like, why?
Glaring errors.
Oh, just throughout. Yeah. But Sarah Paulson in the People vs. O.J.
she's fab.
She's fab. Do you know what? I don't like the Kardashians for every reason. Probably everyone doesn't like them for, but you've got to give your props to Kris Jenner, because Nicole had a lot of friends who came out and did books and did this and that. She never did. She never came out and reaped any money off of that case. She did do a cookbook that was dedicated to Nicole, and it was things that they used to do together, but she did that. She had no reason. She had no reason to do it for money. She has her own money. She did it because it was an anniversary or something like that.
But then some might say that Khloe Kardashian is the daughter of O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
Some might say.
But the dad, Robert Kardashian, you can see, if you watch the trial where it gets up to the not guilty and all of the lawyers, Shapiro and all of them are sitting there, and Cochrane, and they go, yes, Gotti, yes, we got it.
He doesn't.
He actually pushes his chair back and goes, oh my god, what just happened?
Yeah, how was this even?
He knew he was guilty.
Oh yeah,
he knew it. He came out a year later after the event and talked to very famous American journalist woman. Oh, Barbara Walters.
Yeah.
and said, yeah, I if you watch us, I'd just pull my chair back and go, oh my God. But what you've got to remember is that OJ may have walked out of there a free man. His life was forever changed because
everyone knows he's guilty.
Nobody wanted anything. He thought he was going to go back to the life of what he had, and he didn't. He lost his sponsorships. Nobody, like, in the People versus OJ, you can hear, like, his son says, he goes, I need to book a table at this restaurant. They went, Dad, they won't. Yeah. They won't have you there at all. He lost everything. Yeah. Good. Piece of shit. Yeah. Yeah, that one's it's really good, and it deserved every nomination and the Oscar that it got for it, because it goes into such. It's not just one-sided. You get to learn a lot about the prosecutors as well, and the relationships that he has with the other people who are involved. It's not just about OJ. Yeah. Which is nice. That was a good documentary. The JonBenet Ramsey ones, I've seen loads, and I know there's a new one on Netflix at the moment. Yeah. Which casting JonBenet. When I looked at it, I was like, that's a bit distasteful. Is that going to be distasteful? Because the premise is that they're casting for a retelling of the JonBenet story. So it's actors being asked to audition to be her, to be JonBenet, to be the brother, her older brother, and both of her parents, and then members of the investigation team for a dramatisation. But the key thing to remember when you watched it, there's a reason that they're asking the actors to carry out the auditions in a certain way, because what they're then saying is, well, if that was you, this is what happened. You're her mother. What would this has just happened. What would you do? And you can see the actors kind of going, well, they're all saying what everybody else was thinking. Well, why did they do that? And why isn't she'd be really upset, wouldn't she? And then they say, well, this is actually what did happen. Yeah. And then you just go, really? Well, like, why would they do that? And it makes you really think. Yeah. Well, the unsaid thing is her family had something to do with it. Well, last year there was 2 documentaries came out. One that was done in 2 parts, where a bunch of experts got together and were going to piece it all. And the forensic guy from The Keepers, he was there too. And they were going to piece it all together using forensic evidence. The second one, which was probably the best one I've ever seen, is just giving you matter of fact. Yeah. This is what happened. They're not pointing the blame on anybody. They're just saying, this could have happened. This is the evidence. It's not going to get solved. We don't know who did it, but this is the evidence. The second one with the forensics, they beeline for that brother, because there's a telephone conversation, the telephone call. You can go on YouTube and you can find JonBenet Ramsey's mum doing the 911 call, and she's bawling and she's hysterical, and they've taken her and this, that, and the other. And at the end of the call, there is a few seconds that she doesn't put the phone down, and you can hear her as calm as day talking to the brother, and then the phone goes off, and they try to piece together what she's actually saying. Now, the brother, it said the whole time as this was going on, he was in bed. Well, on that tape, if you think they kind of put it into your head what you think you should be hearing. So you think that is the boy, then why would he say he was in bed for? She was found with a chunk of pineapple in her stomach. Their whole premise was that the brother, they were fighting over something. He hit her. The parents discarded it, and that's the end of it. Because back in them days, it would have been a frown. It would have been such a, what's the word I'm looking for? A frown upon the family if the son had done that. It wouldn't have been on him, it would have been on them. Yeah. So they covered it up. That's what they beelined for, which I think is really wrong. Yeah. It was really distasteful actually, because they just went straight for him. They didn't look into the fact that there was the shoes prints that were found, the fact that somebody could get in and out of that house very easily, the window from the cellar where nobody could get through there. Well, a guy actually did get in and out of the cellar just using it as normal, so they didn't go into any of that. They didn't go into the fact that the police fucked up the whole thing to start with. The fact that the police who... This house is treated as a crime scene. What do? Let everybody walk all over it. And then tell the dad, instead of... The parents should have been taken out of the house straight away.
Yeah.
But no, the parents were left in the house and the police went, oh, why don't you just go and have another look around? And there she is in the cellar. How are you, man?
Yeah. I mean, even
what the fuck?
The casting John Bonet, there's a police officer who is I think the guy used to be a cop, and he says, actually, when I was in the police force in Chicago, or wherever it was that he was from, he says, we used to use the John Bonet Ramsey case as how not to police.
Because come on.
So the police force used to say, well, if you're ever going to investigate a crime scene, John Bonet Ramsey, that's how not to do it.
Not to do it.
Everything they did, don't do that.
Because they absolutely messed it up. And there was another thing that they beeline for as well. The ransom money was exactly the amount of his bonus that year.
Yeah.
And the handwriting was done by specialists to say that is her handwriting. And they had body language people coming in of how defensive she got, and they made it all about them. It wasn't about their daughter, it was about them.
I'm sure there was somebody else who was one of the actors auditioning to play her, I think. Or maybe one of the other characters, who said that they had quite sort of holistic beliefs about, things that happened to people, and said that unfortunately, or whichever way you want to look at it, that John Bonet Ramsey's mother then later died of ovarian cancer, and they said that's because they think that she was the one who did it, or she was responsible. She carried that guilt with her, and obviously her child coming from her reproductive system, eventually it killed her. I mean, I think that's a little bit...
That's really way out there.
Unusual to even comprehend.
It really is.
But it just goes to show that the overall opinion is that it was our family who did it, because there was nobody else. I mean, it was in Boulder, wasn't it, where she was from. And they said it was like one of those towns where nothing ever happens.
No, nothing. I would say watch both the documentaries and make your own mind up about it, because you might take something from one of them that you won't take from the other. But in my personal opinion, the first one that I saw, it was the voiceover was by Chloe Savon. She did the voiceover of it. That one was the more interesting one because it got into everything. It didn't just focus on the family and the cock up that the police did. It was more to do with this, that, and the other that could have led up to this, or it could have been this, or it could have, they had so many things that it could have been.
Yeah,
this is a case that will never, ever be solved, ever. No. There's nothing ever it's going to be like Jack the Ripper. Nothing's ever you're never going to know at all.
Well, this is it.
But there's one documentary that I will never let anybody watch. I will ruin it for you so you don't have to watch it, because I can't believe I watched it. Michaela recommended it to us, and she says it's heartbreaking and this, that, and the other. She just didn't tell us how heartbreaking it was. It's called A Letter to Zachary, and it is one of the most emotional documentaries you will ever watch. It is a guy whose friend was murdered by a woman who actually had a son with her. Well, she was pregnant when she murdered him with his son, and he's doing a documentary. It wasn't a documentary. It was just he was just doing clips. He was going from, he had family. His mother was English, so he had family in England and family in America, and he was just going around everyone who knew him just to say, listen, Zachary, this is what your dad was like. These, how great your dad actually was, how funny he was. It was actually Canada, sorry, it wasn't America. Was it Newfoundland? Yeah, it was in Canada. Yeah. And he did this amazing thing of all of his family, and you just think that's what it's about. The fact that this woman murdered this guy, and she got away with it because she was pregnant. She did really get away with it. The grandparents, like his parents, Zachary's grandparents, get involved in the kid's life, and they fight for custody because she's a bit of a bitch about it. The power thing of, you're not having him because he's mine. And then starting to realise that Zachary actually liked his grandparents more than he liked his... If you would have put Zachary in a room with his grandmother, and his mother would be his grandmother he ran to first. She got very jealous of that. She was a very unstable woman. And the twist of it is that... And why it became a documentary for is because this woman drugged her son and walked off a cliff with him. And they both died.
So you have to watch it all with that little boy and then see that.
And then just that at the end. And it becomes a letter to, it's called a letter to Zachary because that's what he was going to call it. And it was a letter to everyone, basically.
Yeah.
Because it was heart-wrenching. Just to watch them grandparents knowing that they had to sit in the same room with a woman who had murdered their son and then who fucking murdered their grandchild. So I ruined it for you so you don't have to watch it because it's...
Well, we did say there was spoilers.
It's so sad. It's just, it's a really tough one to watch. I'll never watch it again.
Yeah, there's some good ones.
There's some
Netflix,
good. Amy Berg is one of my favourite documentary makers. She did the West of Memphis, which is about the West Memphis 3.
We've talked about it before, haven't we? We've
yeah,
that
but
before,
if you wanna know about the West of Memphis is good if you just want to know. Mm-hmm. Paradise Lost is the one where it started from, because Paradise Lost, the first one came out and it was about 3 kids who were goths who got accused, tried, and sentenced for murdering 3 boys
because they were outcasts.
Because they were outcasts, exactly. And it starts with that, and that was the first one. I don't think the other two were planned. There's 3 parts to this documentary because it goes over time. The outcry from the first one, because they just could see how these boys did not do this murder. The outcry from the first one led to the second one, and the second one is how these groups came together. I've known about the West Memphis 3 since the late 90s, and always knew about the case. So when I saw this, it was like, yes, this is how we all reacted when we watched the first one. And then the third one is the conclusion, because these men now did actually get out of prison on a technicality which I have never heard of before. They basically had to stand in front of a judge and say, I am guilty of the crime you are saying I did, however, I am innocent. I know I'm innocent, but the state will put me as guilty. That's
the bargain.
That's how they got out. So they couldn't sue because it was gonna be retried again. They had new DNA evidence. It was gonna be brought to court again. They were gonna win it, and the state went, "Oh no, they win this, we are buggered. They will take everything from us." And they put this to say, right, you can get out of prison now, because they could have quite easily. Damien, one of the guys, was actually on death row. The other 2 weren't. Yeah. Because Damien was the oldest out of all 3.
He was the one who was the most to blame.
Yes, that's what they say. And they got the deal, and obviously Damien said yes, of course, I want to walk out of prison today. And Jesse Miss Kelly, he said yes, definitely. But the other one, Jason Baldwin, said no, I'm innocent. I'll take this to court. And then he realised that they could quite easily move Damien's date to be before that case, because they can, because the court, it hadn't gone to, they couldn't do it if it'd gone to court, but it hadn't yet. So they could have quite easily moved his death sentence up and murdered him, and it would have been murder. Yeah. And Jason went, no, I've got to do it, and I did it for him, and they walked out of prison on that technicality. But if you watch it, it's Paradise Lost gives you everything you need, really. There's nothing in there that's missed. There's nothing in there that's twisted. And no one making a murderer, we think we're getting matter-of-fact things, but we're really not. Yeah. There's a lot of things that was taken out of that, and you can read about it now that kind of like might sway your opinion of how you thought of the actual documentary, but Paradise Lost doesn't at all.
I mean, and what's interesting there, I'm obviously talking about the West Memphis 3, and then also about making a murderer, is that this convictions have been overturned, really, as a result of people taking an interest, making a documentary and going, hold on a minute. Yeah. And even you guys didn't investigate this properly, and this is why.
Even Damien says none of this would be happening if it wasn't for Paradise Lost, because we would have just been a statistic. I would have been killed, nobody would have known about us, and it would have been shoved under the carpet, because this is what these little states think they can get away with. Because they're so little and insignificant, things like this can be just brushed away.
Well, it is
so important that these documentaries are out there and seen, because if we don't know it's happening, how the hell are we meant to do something about it?
Yeah, and I mean, as a result of going back to the keepers, I joined a group on Facebook after I saw the documentary when it was released just the other week, and the two ladies who are the investigators were the administrators of the Facebook page, which grew from however many hundreds of members they had before the Netflix documentary aired, because obviously they've been looking into this for years. There was something like within 24 hours about another 5,000 people had gone on, and everyone started putting on their own views about what they thought. And some of these people who obviously were just completely oblivious to the fact that you do realise some of the victims are reading your comments.
Yeah.
Like, have a bit of respect.
Yeah.
And it was just, on my behalf, I was just so interested to see I thought, well, I want to see what happens, because I want to see that they get some sort of justice out of the end of it, and I want to kind of wait and see. And that seems to be what's happening, that they're trying to bring somebody to account for what's happened.
They have to. I don't know if they will, because when you Deliver Us from Evil was back in 2006, and that really exposed the Catholic Church for what it really is. I know there's probably 1,000 other documentaries that have tried, but this one made mainstream.
Yeah.
Like, this got into Netflix. It's very easy to get a hold of online, and it still goes on today. So they are being exposed, but because of money, nothing will ever get done about it. It's sad. It just really is sad, and it's one of those frustrating things where you can be angry about it, but what's going to come out of it? Nothing ever. Especially with the Catholic Church, nothing ever does. There's how many people come forward and said this, that, and the others happened, and nothing gets done.
Yeah.
Because of money. Money grabbing bastards.
Well, yeah.
That's what they are. All of them. I think we'll round it off there. I think we've had enough anger in.
I think it's been an angry podcast.
It's been a very serious one. Probably one of the serious ones that we've done. Yeah. So we'll go back to
hard-hitting journalism at its best.
Well, next week's Wonder Woman.
Woo! We did, just as a side note, go and see the new Pirates of the Caribbean film this afternoon, didn't we?
Yeah, if you've got any doubt that you don't want to see this because of maybe the last one or the third one, just...
You think, Johnny Depp's kind of dragging this out a bit.
Just ignore that, because I really enjoyed it. It wasn't as bad as... It had a very similar feel to the first one. I couldn't really understand Javier Bardem half the time. His Spanish, it's just really thick. Really thick. The effects in it were amazing. The action in it was everything. Johnny Depp was probably the best I have seen him act in a long time. Yeah. Orlando Bloom's in there. That just cannot be helped. He was part of the first one. He's not in it a lot, though. No, that's all right.
The start and the finish.
It's a good job he's got a pretty face.
That's all you've got to put up with.
Yeah, because he can't act for shit.
No.
He really can't. No. It's a good job the story wasn't focused around him, because I would have been bitterly disappointed.
Or Keira Knightley.
I don't mind Keira Knightley. She's
kind of not at the Emma Watson level.
No, not at all.
You cannot stand her.
If you want to...
She's kind of... She's up there for me.
Watch...
Not bothered.
Watch Making a Friend for the End of... Is it... Oh, How to Make a Friend for the End of the Earth or something, or the End of the Earth or something like that. Beautiful story, and she's in it with Steve Carell, the two unlikeliest of people to be together, and it really works. It's such a good film. But Pirates wasn't too bad. No. But yeah, we've got Wonder Woman next week, and I can't wait, and I can't believe that I'm actually excited for it.
Yeah.
Given that a year ago,
over a year ago, when we saw Batman vs Superman, which was absolutely
atrocious. But the saving grace of it was that Gal Gadot came out with it just changed my opinion on her. And I put this in a post the other day on Facebook that I wasn't her biggest fan. I did not like her at all. I thought she was too commercial. But then I go back and I've read the New 52.
When you see the story, backstory is really cool. So please don't screw it up.
Well, the first write-ups for it have been very, very good. The second ones, which is just after the premiere, have been even better. And a lot of people are coming out of it saying it is a very, very strong DC film.
I hope so, because Suicide Squad had such a lot of hype, and everyone was like, it's going to be fantastic because Margot Robbie's in it, and then it was like, nah. it was okay. And then actually, as the time's gone on, you've gone, you know, it was really bad.
Yeah. DC just need to take a look at the CW and say, what are they doing so right? Because they're doing everything right. Oh my god, did you see Stephen Amell do the Ninja Warrior?
I did.
Oh my god, that was amazing.
Yeah.
That guy is an absolute hero.
But he's an athlete.
He's amazing. And if anyone watched the Flash season finale this week, I'm with yous. Boo-hoo. Really am with yous. It was a tough one to watch. It was a brilliant season once again for the Flash, and cannot wait to see where they go with it from here, because it's been very, very interesting. What else is there? Yes, just to go on a bit of a somber note, actually. Zack Snyder this week came out and pulled out of Justice League.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was back in March, his daughter Autumn Snyder, who's 20 years old, had committed suicide, and he needs time to heal and to grieve, and he has now passed the reins to Joss Whedon. Wow.
I think it's going to be good.
It is terrible what has happened, and everyone knows my opinions on Zack Snyder. Amazing cinematographer, absolutely piss poor director. But Joss Whedon, but I would never wish any, and I would never say anything disparaging.
Well, it's going to be two very different films, whoever you put in place of him.
Mm-hmm. But Joss Whedon,
yeah.
I didn't like the way he left Marvel. I thought the Marvel universe was very, very, very distasteful towards him. Yes, Age of Ultron was a bit of a push everything in together, get so much crammed in, but it wasn't a bad film by any accounts. It wasn't Avengers good, but it wasn't terrible. And the way he left Marvel because of the fans was atrocious. It should never have happened. And I like the fact that we have the Russo brothers taken over from him, but it should never have happened the way that it did. And I hope DC gets something good out of the fact that Joss Whedon is with them right now, because they need it.
Yeah.
They really do need it.
Yeah. And just to mention, before we sign off, about Avengers and the Russo brothers, no, I didn't meet Chris Hemsworth.
Oh, this was so
I missed him.
Funny.
I missed him by 2 minutes. God damn it.
I didn't actually go. Carolyn did. They were filming 10 minutes away from us in Durham, and it wasn't just Chris Hemsworth. James Gunn was there.
James Gunn was there. The Russo brothers were there. I forget her name. She's damn it. It'll come to me later after I sign off. But rumour has it that Robert Downey Jr. was here about a month or two ago, just walking around.
You did get to talk to one of the makeup artists.
I did get to talk to the makeup artist who has been makeup artist on a lot of the Marvel movies, including all of the Guardians of the Galaxy films so far. He was really, really nice guy, and I didn't catch his name. We were all just standing outside the hotel, and he spent about an hour.
Oh, that's
and he
nice.
came over to people. We were just sort of standing, a few of us congregating, having a chat after we'd been in the bar. And he came over and was just like, "Hi, nice to meet you."
I work on Guardians.
So then, we've had a great time, and are you excited for this? And he was just, and I was talking to him about Los Angeles and California and stuff, and he was talking.
Did he
about
say
that.
These hands have touched Chris Pratt's face?
I nearly said, turn your hands over and let me inspect them.
Has there any DNA on there?
Is there any Robert Downey DNA left in your head?
Can you touch my face?
Can you reserve that for scientists to use?
So yeah, she didn't meet them. She was literally 2 seconds away.
I know loads of people who did meet Chris Hemsworth, and apparently thoroughly lovely man.
He looks it. And Thor looks amazing. Saw the trailer again today.
Ragnarok.
Yeah. I missed the Spider-Man one though because the fucking cock up with the seats, but I got to catch the end of it.
So anyway.
So that's it. So that is how long have we gone for?
A while. An angry while.
An angry while. Hang on.
Because we felt that a rant was necessary.
No, it just doesn't actually say.
but never mind. So episode 26 will be after we've seen Wonder Woman next week, and we'll let you know how that goes.
Yeah, so you can find us on YouTube, nerdfeed.com. You can find us on SoundCloud now. It's not iTunes, but it's still something that you can download to your phone and listen to us on your phone or when you're on the go. Yeah. So we'll be on there. All links will be down below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please subscribe. We're lovely people.
We're not that bad.
We're not. We're cat people. Everyone loves cat people.
Yeah, cat people.
Everyone.
May have some news about that.
We may, in the forthcoming episodes, we may have more cat news. Cat news.
We should do an episode on
cat news. Oh God, you don't want us to. People will turn off. There's a crazy cat lady talking about a cat.
You'd be surprised. The cat community will come together. Anyway.
Yes, so that's it. That's episode 25 in the bag. My phone's gone off again. God damn it. Well, thank you very much for listening. Please remember, like, share, subscribe. Comment in the comments below. Let us know what you think. If you've got any, questions or topics or even any points of view of anything that we brought up tonight, we want to hear from you. So thank you very much.
Bye.
Goodbye now. Bye.